Things might get weird.
Yeah.
Welcome to our life.
I thought it would be awesome to have you guys on. Like, how have you made it work, or how was divorce even something that came across your mind?
Oh,
Was
it definitely was
Yeah.
there. I actually told her, I said, I understand if you wanted to divorce me, go find some other guy.
I do have to say, I never actually thought of divorce.
Really?
Yeah.
But I gave her the
Myself.
option.
Yeah.
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 That's awesome though.
And it's funny you brought up Reddit. So Reddit, it was fairly new around this time when I had kind of gotten out of the church portion of it. I was, maybe this is telling you how old I am in that subreddit, but there was only maybe 200 people that had actually
Oh, wow.
subscribed to that subreddit at the time. One of the main guys that really helped me through it, which he's not there anymore, his screen name is still there, and I've been friends with him on Facebook for a while, but his ID was Mithrin.
Huh.
Mithrin was probably the most influential for me on that transition than anybody else I could actually imagine. I mean, John DeLynn helped me through it a little bit as well. He's a little controversial these days, but
Yeah.
I don't think he chooses to be that way. I think he's just part of his platform that he's in right now. But Mithrin, he was a guy who went through the same type of transition, was very analytical, was very much into the deep doctrinal stuff, was not in the angry portion of it.
Cool.
Because there is a few stages of when you leave, and
Totally.
that anger
No doubt.
stage is very difficult. But he helped me understand what I needed to do with my wife at the time, and he basically told me straight up, he says, you just got to be upfront with her, tell her everything that you're going through, and if she can be there to support you, great. If not, know that she is there. At least that's all. So anything that was controversial that would maybe break her heart or something to that effect, bring it to the subreddit first to work through the anger portion of it, and then take it to her shortly after that, which is what I did. So I've got a big history of Reddit. Reddit was my go-to for all of my backside that I never really showed everybody. It was more of a dark area that for me, I was very in a dark place at the time. Was able to understand my thought processes, where things were going, and that's why I gave her that option. I understand if you want a divorce, I'd support that.
Yeah. As hard
Well,
as-
and honestly, I was glad that, I mean, he got that feeling that he should bring it to me, because prior to him actually telling me, like, I'm done, whatever, there was like, it was more, he was kind of closed off. Like, he wasn't really wanting to talk about things like he usually wanted to. And there was always something there. Like, I'm like, what's up? Like, you're not sharing things like you usually would. And
Well, mentally, I feel like I was probably on that path of suicidal at
Yeah.
the time. It was dark for me. Very, very dark time.
And I knew, I mean, it was obvious. I mean, husband and wife, you should know there's something up, like, but he just didn't say anything. And finally he did. And it was definitely hard at that time. But I mean, now even looking back, I'm just like, I'm so grateful you did, because honestly, I don't think we would have made it if he wouldn't have,
Yeah.
even though it was a hard conversation. It was, I mean, I can't speak for him, but I'm sure it was like so terrifying to come and say that, because that's a big thing, especially with how staunch he was. And, it's a big change. And
Well, and I think everybody's journey in or out, especially, I guess, since we're on this topic, like it's different. And it's almost like, I almost think about it like if you're studying the gospel and you're like, at what point do you actually know enough that you want to get baptized? Like, at what point do you know enough or feel enough that you're like, this doesn't make sense anymore? And I was in and out, and then I think I was in, out, and then in for a little bit, and I was just like, ugh. Like, it all just kind of came down at once, and I was just like, well, I'm done. Like, I can't.
The weight just becomes too much.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it anymore. Right?
well, and especially because, I mean, that's how you were raised, right? Like,
Totally.
this is your whole life. Like, you've never necessarily seen anything different,
Totally.
And so to say, like, you're walking away from something like that, that's hard.
Yeah.
Because where do you go from here? Like, what do I believe? What do I want for my life?
Yep. Yeah, restarting.
Were there signs of like, did you guys stop praying as much together, like less scripture study stuff? Were there things like that? But then it just kind of became normal, so you didn't worry about it too much? Was it stuff like that? And then
So I transitioned away from the Book of Mormon and the Doctrine and Covenants and started moving towards Bible. And I just wanted to kind of stick with the old Christian root.
Yeah.
Just to stay away from the LDS portion of it. And that's what I started teaching in gospel doctrine and things. It's just, hey, this is what the Bible says, and this is what we need to go off of. So I was,
Man, so you were still teaching during all this too.
yeah,
Yeah.
So you just kept the calling and
still
just kept
kept going.
studying
And then when I finally went to Amanda and told her, I says, I'm done. It was
Yeah.
at that moment I asked to be released. And then shortly after that, and I'd say 6 months, maybe it was a year, but either way,
It
I
would
had to
have
sit
been
down with
December.
your parents. So it would have been almost a year. Yeah, we sit down with your parents.
Sorry, it's like very in my head because there's certain things that happen.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
it
no,
was
it's okay.
December.
Association,
So
yeah.
I've blocked a lot of it because it was so dark.
Yeah, for sure.
I was still trying to figure things out, but we had to sit down and discuss with her parents that I no longer believed it anymore, and I wasn't
because we were
gonna
in
be
the
a part
same
of it.
ward, like we
You
lived
lived with them.
Oh, yeah.
Lived in the
so
same
they needed
house.
to know what was going
Yeah.
on.
So I broke the news to them, and I can't remember your mom's response, but your dad was very turned off by it, and not as loving as, obviously he just wasn't that way for me. But your mother, she seemed to accept it,
Yeah, she
and
was
she
very
just says,
loving.
"We're going to
That's
be here
her.
for you, and you're going to be a part of our family, and nothing's going to change. You're still the same person." So
Cool.
that's
She
how
was very accepting, and
she's very
that's sweet.
respective. So
She learned from the 25 years your dad
Yeah, I
had
was
been.
gonna
out.
say
she
that probably
understands. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then it's in that same conversation that I looked at him and I said, "There's no chance I'm coming back.
Is that what you
There's
said?
literally no chance I am coming back."
Huh.
And I'm sure. I mean, I can't talk for her, but I'm
She
sure
had it
she
in her
probably
mind.
thought,
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
see
see.
about
I
that.
beg to
That's
differ. It's just a phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So communication was big. Turns out it
No,
makes
that's
sense.
awesome.
honestly,
Yeah.
like, if I could tell anybody that's going through this or having any issues like that, communication is number one.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know something's happening, how are you supposed to fix that? Or not necessarily fix it, but go about it. Like,
Well,
you got to talk about it.
yeah. And I know for me, it was like I could be more empathetic of what he was going through as opposed to just being mad that he's being a butt, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you're like, help me help you here. What are you going through so that I can help? And what can I do to support you at this time? But I can't if you don't allow
know.
me to,
Yeah.
right? So I am very grateful that you gave him that advice from the get-go because it would
For sure.
it could be a totally different story here too. So
Absolutely.
Well, what I had learned from early on, and the reason why I gave that advice, it wasn't so much that came from me or anything else. It was obviously that guy on Reddit, Mithrin,
Yeah.
who told me to be completely upfront and honest with your wife. And if she wants to hang out with you, then she'll hang out with you. If she doesn't, then you just have to respect that and you guys go separate ways. And in this case, obviously, we stay together and y'all did the same thing. I would say, though, on what we just said, yes, communication is key, but you have to do it not necessarily strategically, but you have to do it on specific terms. And the reason why I say it that way is because you can't just walk into church one day and you're giving a talk, and then it's at the same time to say, you know what, I'm done. Joseph Smith had 36 wives. You know, there's four
have to be
different first
respectful. You have
visions.
to be
So
respectful.
you can't do that. You can't go with that type of platform. And so the only way you're going to gain respect from somebody else for doing so is to give respect. And in this case, that was what we had to do. And we had to go to my in-laws first on that because we lived with them. And then the discussion after with my parents. And I'll kind of preface this portion of it is it was very hurtful at the time.
Yeah.
But we've worked through a lot of those since then, and our relationship is good now.
Good.
Cool.
But at the time when my parents had heard that I was leaving, again, it's a different contrast because Amanda's the youngest, I'm the oldest. They'd never had something like this happen.
Right.
And all the other kids are not married. Well, I think Bryson wasn't, maybe even Bradley. No, Bradley wasn't married yet.
It was
Because it was his wedding. It was right before his wedding that I had to sit
and
down.
he didn't want to bring it up until he had to his parents.
Yeah.
I waited and waited because I was worried about the judgment. I was worried about being kicked out of the family. The whole stuff that you were reading on Reddit
Yeah.
was very real to me,
Yeah.
at least on my side of the family. And so we called my parents and said, "Hey, you guys have some open time?" I think it was on a Saturday. Maybe it was a Sunday. I can't remember. But we sat down I said, "Hey, you got about a half an hour to an hour to chat." And we sat
You
down.
might want to say it was right before your brother got married.
Yes, it was like a week before my brother got
And
married.
so we were going to be going to the temple.
I wasn't
Obviously,
going to be in the temple.
Yeah.
So
So
he
you
had to
it's
say
like
why he wasn't gonna be there.
This was the
now
grand
have to
reveal.
face it.
Yeah.
And they had no idea at this point. Just
No, they did
Really?
not have any
Yeah.
idea. So
Yeah.
the grand reveal was coming, and I needed to make sure they had the preface for it out of respect for them.
Yeah.
So I had sat there. Amanda and I were on the couch at the house that they were living in Alpine, and one thing led to another, and I basically told the story, kind of kept out of the specifics as to why I was leaving. And
Yeah.
I just looked at them and I said, hey, I'm done. Not going to be in the church anymore, and I'm out. And they broke down in tears, and they were just, it was very much an emotional moment. And I remember one thing that my mother had said, which maybe I'll regret for saying this, but like I said, we've worked through it. She said that I wish you would have told me you were coming out gay rather than leaving the church.
Mm.
I was like, why? That would be a double whammy. That's what I told her. That would mean I'm not staying in the church.
Yeah, at
and
least
I'm
I have
gay.
my
Like, losing
family,
my
like-
marriage.
Oh my gosh.
Right. But you know what? I think I've read and heard other parents have a similar reaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sitting
Yeah.
here thinking like it's sad that you feel that we have to have these conversations even. Like
Sure.
can't Brandon just be an adult and not go?
Yeah.
And
then-
talk to your brother and leave it at that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like
Well, it's just like how my mother was.
it's
We love you. Like we understand
awesome,
you're going through
yeah.
this. It was very accepting. It wasn't how terrible you are, and
well, I
Well,
look at how many bad reactions.
Yeah.
I'm very reactionary. She will tell you with our kids, especially. I have to like, if I can just bite my tongue for a minute and breathe, then it's usually a lot better. And
Right.
I'm
Correct.
38, damn near, and still learning this. But so you almost
Like
can't
you
blame
are.
them either, right?
No,
Like,
and I can't. I won't.
and
You know,
and
it-
with
it
the way
was-
you
it was
raised
a-
them, yeah,
It was a big deal for them to hear something.
Yeah.
Their
For sure.
oldest child is coming back. The one who was pulling all the other ones to church. The one who was teaching them all the doctrine.
everybody would go to him with
Whatever
doctrinal questions. Like
questions,
he was the walking Book of Mormon. Let's just say. I
Sure.
don't know.
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
as it may
And like,
sound.
and you,
now.
That's great.
you in that spot probably
cringe.
would have maybe had the same reaction that your parents had, right? If they're
Probably,
a kid,
yeah.
right? So it's one of those things where, in all fairness, yeah, we give you, we
At
give
the time,
everybody
it was
grace
very
because
hurtful.
absolutely,
So
He just needed somebody
Absolutely.
to love him. Is all he needed.
absolutely.
So once we talked about it, we talked it through it. They wanted to ask questions as to what specifics, the reasons why. I think they had the inclination or the thought that maybe I had cheated on Amanda. There was some things that had come
Because we
out
didn't
about
say a
that.
lot of details like why he
We just
even
said I'm
had
done.
doubt or
Yeah.
And they never got any of the specifics as to why. And it was because I didn't want to bring those up to them to
Right.
help them in their testimony. And I basically just said, if you're believing it right now, why would I want to destroy something that you hold dear and that you're loving and you're wanting to be a part of? I don't want your world to become dark like mine has. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much truth to that. Yes, first, thank you for the advice you gave us because that really helped our marriage a lot.
Sure.
And we've talked about this some on here already, but like the church was the one thing we felt like we had in common. Like,
Yeah.
we grew up very different and have a lot of the different, even today, like we like different music and different movies, and her family sings and dances, and mine likes a little bit of sports and some swear words and some hunting and stuff, a little bit of redneck.
Some swear
You can,
words.
what did we say? You could,
Just throw that in
you
there.
could take the man out of the trailer, but you can't take the trailer out of the man, And maybe it wasn't actually a trailer, but we lived in some pretty interesting duplexes and apartment
Yeah.
buildings. So. But what was I gonna say? That I guess I just relate with you. Like even my little sister. There's other family that it's still hard to for this day that didn't go to the temple. I have a younger sister that got married about a year ago, and I remember having to be like I just walked up to her and I said, I am so sorry that I'm not, and I don't think she knows I've kind of had my struggles or whatever, but I don't think she really understood where I was at. And I'm like, I'm not going to be there. And it breaks my heart that I would go in a heartbeat. I just can't lie to get in.
Yep.
I'm not going to do it. And I wish that would be something the church would change eventually.
Mhm.
And, cause there's some, even other people like that are believing members have told me that their parents couldn't go to the temple with them to see them get married. And I'm like, that is freaking
That's
heartbreaking. you know?
my dad couldn't go, and that was
Yeah.
hard. He would leave us at the door, and we'd give him a hug, and that was tough. Like to
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
away from somebody that you loved and
And tough
couldn't
for
be
him.
there. Like, yeah,
Totally.
and it was terrible.
And like,
Yeah.
no matter what, like, yeah, anyway. And I remember being on the other side of that though, and having someone else I knew that was close to me getting married and seeing that her husband's parents couldn't go. And I'm like, well, that's their problem. Like they should straighten their stuff out. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's interesting how you step back, right? You can tell you have a lot of patience and you've kind of learned from it. And it's like, man,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of grace and patience for both sides and a lot of maturity and a lot of experience and
lot.
understanding. Yeah.
Because they could lie their way through it and go.
Yeah.
They wanted to.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
And in
There's
some
people
ways
that
it
do
would
that.
be easier other than if we have a
yeah.
conscience, it's just not, it's not possible. So it's
Yeah.
So then,
damn it all, you know?
right?
Yeah.
So then I had actually talked to Bradley, my brother, and told him that I wasn't going to
You're
be
gonna be
there.
there.
And that was when I revealed it to the rest of the family.
And
But
he
it
was
was
respectful to you.
very much so, yeah. And so during that that moment where I was talking to my parents, the one caveat they threw at me was, do not talk to your siblings about this. If you did, then we would disown you and we
Mm.
would keep Amanda in the family. If you guys divorced, we would keep Amanda and you would not be a part of the family. So,
Man, yeah.
And that was hard to hear. Like,
Yeah.
just being his spouse was like, oh, wow.
but you know, this is obviously good now. Everything's
Yeah.
good.
Sure.
At the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
it was
It
very
was,
hard.
it was
And
tough.
We already know that would be
Absolutely.
the case if we got divorced, so.
That's because I'm
We-
cooler than you
They
are.
pretty much have
Just
told us
kidding.
that without
Just
knowing my
kidding.
issues with
No.
gospel stuff.
obviously, I was on my path towards the anger stage of leaving. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was only
And that's the
adding
thing is
fuel
you
to the
go through
fire.
phases like where you're figuring it out, getting angry. Like he was very dark at this time. Yeah.
I was in the
Yeah.
anger stage for a few years.
Yeah.
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 It's
So
hard to
that
work
brought
through.
He hated
for sure
everything.
just fuel on the fire there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got angry about it all.
She still thinks I'm angry sometimes. She told me that last night, and I'm like, I get intense and passionate about it,
Feel like-
especially when I'm like, I was telling Maddie, I'm like, it almost like ruined our family. I'm like, when we were talking the other night, last night, I'm like, it almost like tore everything I love away from me, and
It
You-
could have.
it could have. And I'm like, do you get that like that? And I'm like almost getting emotional, and I get intense about it because like that is a big deal to me. But I'm not angry. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just like that
It's
pisses me
passion.
off. Yeah, it pisses me off that was
Well,
the
it's
case
deep.
because of this.
It's your heart and soul. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're so ingrained in it, and it's so everything, and then you kind of step back, and now I'm kind of like, okay, I used to be able to kind of be told what to do and not to do, and now I get to choose for myself, and
That's
and I
scary.
have, oh dude,
Yeah.
I have done some
It's a
freaking,
big
I'm
deal,
like,
yeah.
I've gone out and lived a little more and learned some hard things, and then full on, and we talked about this the other day, but midlife crisis, and just trying to kind of regroup and figure out like, okay, what do I want for the second half of my life, really.
Yeah. Well, because during that same time, I was trying to figure out. Well, this is before I even told you that I was leaving. Is that I at this point decided I'm throwing the baby out with the bathwater because
Mm.
I did the same thing with Mormonism that I did with Christian faith in general. So I actually my belief, if we want to get into that,
Sure.
Yes.
I don't have a belief in God. I don't believe in an afterlife or any of those things. I believe the only way you can live forever is through whatever you did now, and in that your children will take on throughout their life, and essentially you become almost legendized at that time, if that's even a word. But it's because of the example and the motion that you set in your life that kind of put them on their path towards greatness. That's the only way in my book that we can live forever, or even together for that matter, because it's those stories, almost like Coco, the movie Coco.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You remember,
Okay.
Yeah.
remember me type thing, and that's kind of the idea that I kind of taken on over. Really, it was during that same time, but I was very angry because if there was a God, he was a little like 6-year-old child that had a magnifying glass and it was burning ants.
Yeah.
That's
sure.
the type of prick I was thinking of. Obviously, that's not. If there is a God, that's not the type of God that he would be, or he or she, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I've kind of taken the approach of agnostic. So if there is something, I'm grateful for it. But if there isn't something, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
So if there is a God that will meet when we die and pass through whatever veil there is there, I don't think I'll be held accountable to the standards that I've grown up to. I think I'll be held accountable for the type of person that I was, the type of individual I taught towards my children, as well as the people that I was around. If I was I don't know if it's necessarily I have all these gold stars in heaven that I've been pushing out there, and the black marks have been slowly erasing or whatever. But I feel like as long as you have a good heart, if there is something there, you're going to be rewarded with whatever it is. And if there isn't, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that. So I've kind of let go of caring about tomorrow and worrying more about today.
How has that been? How has that felt overall in your life, like internally? Do you feel more relief from that? Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
feel
When
did
you
it
can
take a
let go
while
of
to-
it, when you can let go of the potential that there is something that you're going to be held accountable for later,
Yeah.
you focus on the today. And I know there's a lot of people that might listen to that and think, oh, well, then why don't you go drink? Why don't you go have sex, murder somebody, all the different things that you would normally never do.
Yeah.
You're not going to be that person. If you were that person and church was the only thing that held you to it, then you're an ass. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just the way it is, right?
The wheels would have come off in another way
It would have,
eventually,
Yeah.
right?
yeah. I mean, so if you're gonna be who you're gonna be.
Yeah.
And in this case, I felt like I was still a good person. So I mean, at least obviously I'm
You are a good
biased,
person.
but
For sure. Well, I think we know that internally, right? Where
Yeah.
we stand. Like,
yeah,
I was talking to a family member of mine just recently, very recently, and over the weekend, and they've dealt with some issues, like different addiction issues and things, and now they've kind of gone from like that to like totally dis like gotten rid of the addiction and have like doubled down on the church stuff, which is great. Like if they're finding real help
yeah,
there, and I'm like, that's great, good for you, man, that's awesome, you know. And but as I kind of see myself, what am I trying to say? Like I kind of see in them what I used to see in myself. That was like if I was struggling, it was because I wasn't living
yeah,
perfectly. And now I'm not having blessings because God isn't going to bless me for not being who I should be.
sure,
And so we live in, like we were kind of talking about this history, but we live in the shoulds, and then we sometimes maybe we overcorrect, and they've kind of done that and gone super hardcore, like so hardcore that I'm like, hopefully they can stay there and not like slip out if something goes crazy, if that makes sense.
hmm
And I looked at him and I just said, dude, like even if you died while you were dealing with your addiction stuff, I think God at the end of the day, this is just gospel by Hayden, okay? I'm like, even if you get to God, I think He knows like what is in your heart. Like, yeah, you have
I
some
would
stuff
second
that,
that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like we're not fooling God here, dude. I think there's so many of us that are like, we just think we check these boxes, and just because we slipped up for a little while or a few years or 10 years or whatever it was, like, and we make it back, like, you don't think God already knows that you would have made that back? He doesn't know who's really deep down in your heart, like who you really are, you know? And it kind of comes around to there's a random thought, like of talking about like family disowning us. I'm like, if we leave or have a struggle, it's like, well, don't you believe in a God that you can pray to at any time? Like if He's not giving up on me or He's not giving up on you, why would you give up on them?
right,
You know what I mean? And we have these like double standards we don't even realize we even have, or these kind of, to me, a little bit wonky thoughts of like, oh, I need to be perfect, but like God knows your potential, and I think that's our half of our journey and struggle here is trying to realize that potential and try to find joy in the journey, because it's a pain in the ass here sometimes, you know.
sure.
Yeah.
No,
And hopefully, and none of us know anything,
Right.
right? We have beliefs and we've had experiences that kind of we build on, and we kind of get these beliefs and everything, but yeah, I think you do, whether you're Mormon or not, I think you have to kind of come to this realization of like, I really hope it's this way, and I hope I can have my family forever, and I hope this, you know what I mean? But unless God came and talked to you, like it's hard to.
but again, it goes back to how I am: prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
preparing for the worst if there is nothing, and hoping
Yeah.
for the best if there is something. And if
Yeah.
there isn't, that's okay.
Yeah. So
Um,
you,
Will we know?
Well, I
He
have
said
to
go
say,
dark, you know?
I have to
Well, it
say
matters.
for Brandon, like before he was a lot about like he lived with a lot of shame. Like when he
Oh, big
was
time.
full in the church, that's kind of his whole mind process was like he had a lot of shame.
Dude, our group of friends, that's all we lived off of is
Yeah.
the shame.
Oh man, I relate with that so much. I just see, yeah.
It was hard, and so I mean it was a difficult way of always having that in the back of your mind, like I do this and this is whatever. But
Mhm.
I feel like ever since he has left the church, he's more had that mindset, like he's talked about, like this is today, like we don't know if we have it tomorrow. And
So there's two things like what she's talking about there is that I think LDS culture and maybe just religion in general always talks about what's to come as opposed to what's here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we can kind of take away from this that if you can stop looking at tomorrow and pay attention to what's in front of you right now, right here, right now, at least you have the guarantee of now. There is no guarantee of tomorrow. So you may take your day a little differently. You may not look at, your screen a little bit longer, or you may decide to do that trip that you wouldn't normally do, or whatever. I mean, you try to make that day better than you otherwise would have because you're not worried about tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to come whether you choose to or not, but you may never actually get to tomorrow too at the
Yeah.
same time.
Mm.
You always have today. You always have now. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. And then the second thing is that I think the LDS culture always pushes perfectionism. And the more you think about perfectionism, it's like, okay, if something is perfect, you kind of lose interest in it because it's no longer that thing that you're going after anymore. It's the imperfections, I think, that we all are drawn to as humankind, as mankind for that matter. And so that was something I went to Amanda on a lot of times, and this is in other discussions that we've had, is that I am drawn to her imperfections. I love her for who she is.
Good thing, because I have a lot of them.
Because
Whatever.
we're all taught to go after that perfect version of ourselves, and I think that is so lame. I really do. I think that perfect version, first of all, doesn't exist. It's a promise that'll never come.
Yeah.
And it's the imperfections, I believe, that we should all be celebrating and understanding better, because it's who we are.
I
The
love it.
imperfections is who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's always a place to work on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
nobody is perfect, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love that. That's awesome.
Anyway.
Thank
Cool.
you. Yeah.
So what does it look like now in your family? Where, because before it was like we're reading scriptures every night and
Yeah.
whatever, right? Saying our
yeah, we
prayers.
don't do
It's
any of that.
evolved.
Yeah. As it should, right?
Yeah.
I know y'all have talked about how you're more progressive in your household.
Yeah.
I would say we're very more progressive compared to other households as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some things we kind of hold to, but other things we don't. You can probably attest to that more than I
I
will.
mean, our biggest thing is you just want to live the best life you can. Like, that's what we push in our family. Like, our children, we don't guilt them on, like, okay, you have to go to church tomorrow. Like, it's more of like we give them a choice. Like, okay, do you want to come with mom to church, or would you rather stay home with daddy? A lot of times they like to stay home with daddy because they get to stay in their jammies and watch whatever they want. And
Mhm.
But it's
you
not
know.
always that way.
No.
There's a lot of times they will wake up and still want to go.
Yeah.
And you're gone, and I'll take them. Like last week, we
Yeah.
had that. So
You will go and take them if they won't.
I won't go to church. No, I'll
No,
drop
drop
them
take
off.
them to
Gotcha.
church.
Yeah.
So we're trying to teach your kids to be more authentic, their
Yeah.
authentic selves.
we
You have
want them.
great. By the way, you have awesome kids. You have great kids.
Oh,
they
and
are pretty
You're they really are awesome. Like, I can't say that for all my friends' kids. Some of them know they have shitheads for kids, but like, but like anyway, like we could hang and we would feel good about it from our standpoint for whatever it's worth. But yeah, it was like super respectful, really nice kids, and I know they all.
Well, and honestly,
kids,
it's
but-
more we want them to do it for themselves instead of you have to do it. Like,
Expectations.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honestly, that's how I feel like I was raised pretty much. Like, I had a choice of what I wanted to do. Like, I mean, my mom,
She was very persuasive, though.
well, no, I wouldn't say that. We knew what she expected. Like, she hoped that we would want to go and we would want to be with her. And, she had hopes for us. It wasn't that she was going to shame us because we didn't choose to do that or whatever. Like,
But most of your siblings had left, and you were the last one. You were kind of raised on your own, and so I think the idea in your mind was, I want to be the best. for my
no,
mom.
I mean, my sister was she got married in Temple.
That's
and
true. That's
everything,
true.
so-
When you say left, you mean left the church or left the house?
Well, they just weren't
Or both?
active.
Okay. Are you? Are any
I
of
wouldn't
your siblings-
say, I mean, all of them,
They probably all still believe. something
yeah,
right
they
now.
believe it, but it's not like they actively
their same
go
lifestyle
every
they
Sunday
want.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
But today, I think our household, we have the extremes. So the extreme of me not being there at all, and we have the extreme of her being there to the extent now. I've kind of moved towards the middle a little bit. She's moved towards the middle, and I think that's what kind of happens. You kind of blow the house up and wait for the dust to settle, and wherever
Yeah.
it settles is essentially the middle line
Hmm.
that you're trying to hold to as much as possible. But even then, that's changed. That line's changed every so often. New things that come up, like when Adeline was wanting to be baptized, that was a struggle for me because I was very much in that dark
and she's our
hate,
oldest, just so.
Yeah.
people
anger
know.
stage, and I was very much against it. And so my consultation to Amanda on this was, I want Adeline to be able to come to me and tell me that she wants to get baptized and to give me reasons as to why, not just because her friends want to do it or whatever. It's just part of the
Was
tradition.
she doing it for herself, or was it because
Sure.
she felt like she had
Oh,
to?
she was
It was part of it.
scared to death.
No,
Well, it wasn't that she was scared. It was just more like she really wanted to be baptized, and she didn't want her daddy to say no. And so it was more like, am I gonna make him realize, like, this is what I want?
Yeah.
That's what she was scared more, because she wanted it so bad.
So any of the church stuff like that they want to be a part of, they still have to run it through me, along with, if there's anything else outside of church, they have to run it through Amanda. So we both have a say in everything that's going on in our kids' lives, but we want our kids to be the ones that decide those things. And it's not that I would hold them away from those, but it's more making them think about it. So in Adeline's case, we wanted her to really think about what she was doing, because at the time I was reading, gosh, you can be 8 years old and join a church, but you can't be
Yeah.
able to leave the church until you're 18.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
right.
wanted her to know that there was more to life than just what
Is
her
that
friends
right
do.
though? Actually, they won't let you sign off to get out until without an
Granted,
adult.
if you wanted to be baptized in the church, I don't know if I think they've gotten around it, but
Yeah.
you have to have both parents okay with it.
Okay.
If you had separate
After-
families,
After you're 8, right? Like,
once you're 8 years old, if they wanted to be baptized,
Before 18.
if you had a split family where they were divorced or whatever, both families have to say yes.
Yeah.
Or both
Yeah.
spouses, I should say, parents for that matter. I could be wrong, but I want to say that's what the manual had said.
I'm sitting here wondering, and I'm like thinking, like, oh, Taft literally got baptized like 3 weeks ago, and they kind of just assumed, I think, that we were both
And I think that's
okay
what
with
happens.
it. So
It's the assumption.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I think there were a lot of times, even in the past, where people were baptized without the other parent's permission.
Yeah.
And that could bring up some legal issue even today,
Yeah.
for that matter. So
Makes sense.
I held that standard that we both had to be okay with it.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's because they know that you're not a part of the church and whatever, but I've actually been asked on every child, like, will they be baptized or not? Like, our 7-year-old, she'll be baptized if she chooses to in September.
this year,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year, they said, "We just want to be respectful. Like, is this something that?" And I'm like, "Well, if she chooses to, I mean, that's
Yeah.
the thing. It's her choice. Like, and if she chooses not to for whatever reason, then that's what she wants, And so far, the two have been baptized, and then obviously in September, I don't know what she's gonna pick, but
Yeah.
anyways,
So
so
back then it was more me hoping my kids would ask questions, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wasn't going to throw it at them just like I didn't with my siblings. But over the years, Adeline and Bentley have asked questions, and I've given them my answers as to what I think about certain topics of the church. And I do remember when Adeline was very young, though, she would come home and she said that I was going to go to the bad place
Mm.
because her teacher had talked about that, and how people who don't go to church are going to go to the bad place, to go to hell, things like that. So she was in tears,
Oh.
thinking that was going to be the case. And I had to explain to her that, this is the way I put it to try and give it a little bit lighter feel for it, because she was very much into Santa prior to that and had just learned that whole thing. And I basically just told her, I said, hey, you know what? The same reason why we throw Santa at you to be better for the entire year is what they do when it comes to heaven and hell for adults.
There you go. Yeah.
Is to keep you in
Little
line.
humor in there,
It's just the
sure.
way it is. So I kind of threw that at her, and she was able to understand it a little bit better. So anytime those type of conversations come up, she doesn't get emotional about it anymore. She kind of just says, "Oh, it's just what they think," and I know my family, I know my parents, and everything's good. So
Yeah.
Good.
I think I mean, it's taken us time because we weren't like this perfect parent or anything, and we're not, still not. But anyways, I feel like over the time, our kids have learned, like, you can't be a perfect person all the time, but you can still be a good person. Like, I think the biggest thing is for myself, I don't know if he sees this or not, Brandon, but I try to teach my kids, like, just because your daddy's not going to church does not make him a bad person.
Yeah.
Just because he doesn't have the same belief as, most do in the church does not make him a bad person, so don't ever make somebody make you feel like your dad's a bad person, because he's a good person, and he is, just because that's who he is, he doesn't have to have the church to be a good person. And so it's kind of open, in my opinion, it's opened up, they can see people as who they are instead of what they're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you can still be a good person. You don't have to have an LDS, Church of Jesus Christ, to say this is a good person, And so
it
I
goes
don't know
back to
if that makes sense.
being authentic,
Yeah.
to your authentic self.
Yeah.
That as long as the church is not who you think you are,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then you're fine. That's what we're trying to teach our kids, is to be who you want to be, as
To
opposed
be
to what
open,
everybody else wants
basically.
you to be.
Being
Yeah.
open to everyone that
Just being open to ideas
Yeah.
too.
How has your faith adjusted, Amanda, with all of it? Is that part of it? Like
Um,
being like, okay, are you kind of coming to well, I don't want to speak for you. I want to know, and then we can.
well, no, I mean, it really, it's obviously it's made me look at things differently. I mean, in a, I guess a more open-minded way, I guess. I don't even know how to say, yeah, I mean, I think I'm more open with like, I'm not so letter of the law like we started. And
You've kind of gone back to what you were growing up with.
yeah,
So you accept people for who they are and you don't judge them for the acts that they do.
yeah, yeah. So,
Does the eternal family thing concern
well,
you or worry you or?
yeah, it does.
So that's a topic that came up because it's come up over the years and we haven't really worked through it, but
Yeah.
we continually try to work through it. And that is, I've always wanted to resign from the church. I haven't resigned, so I still have a membership and
Okay.
we're still there. And the reason why was because
I asked him to
she wanted me to
not
stay.
resign. Because my biggest thing is like, I want my children to be sold to me, right? Like, I want them born underneath the covenant. And that was very, and still is very important to me.
Hmm.
And so for him to be like taken off the records or whatever, it would kind of
Make her look
not
like a
have that
sister
happen.
that was single and
Well, no,
Gotcha.
not, I don't care about that.
I
I
know,
mean,
but on the records it would look that way.
people still like, I will say a funny story. So most of the time
Yeah.
they don't know the story of us or whatever. And so a lot of people think I'm this single mom bringing my 4 kids, whatever. And there was one time where we hadn't had our last, and I came pregnant, and this lady looked at me like, "Oh,
Oh no.
you're one of those,"
no.
or whatever. I'm like, "No." And anyway, she found out later that we're happily married, and anyways, so people even with that they think that I'm a single mom, whatever. So I'm not worried about that. It was more of the fact of like they're being born underneath the covenant because that's important to me.
Yeah.
So, but he was being respectful, and because we were still having kids, and he didn't take his name off the church because it wouldn't
Yeah.
Cool.
have that happen. So,
Does it break your ceiling with your kids to you? If
Yeah.
it does, it would take all that off.
In retrospect, I guess you could say that, but something I found out even around that same time when I was asking her if I could remove my records. This is before quitmormon.com or
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I can't remember
where
what
you
it
just
was.
go and
Quitmormon.org or something. was
Yeah,
up
something to that
was-
effect. It was before this came up, but they were talking about it on the Reddits, and I had approached her and I asked her about it, and then we started talking more about it on Reddit. And there was someone on the inside. This is before Mormon Leaks, but Mormon Leaks came out eventually and talked about how even if you resign from the church, you haven't resigned from the church, meaning that your record is still kept, and it's just moved out of local area and it's moved to Salt Lake.
Mm.
And then what they do is every general conference where they talk about the overall census, meaning that how many members there are, you're still counted as a member at that point.
Really?
And there's more. I think goes into like you're 120 years old or whatever. So even if you pass away, they're still counting in that same number of 16 million, 17 million, or whatever it is.
Hmm.
People that have passed on all the way up until about 120 years old. That's part of the internal records that they had brought out during that Mormon Leaks time.
Ah,
So
interesting.
even at that point, I was like, oh, freak, I guess I don't even need to
It doesn't
resign
matter.
because it doesn't matter. I'm still going to be counted. Because I wanted to go protest almost out of principle to the church that I want to be out, because there was a huge quit at that time. Like when the quitmormon.org or whatever it is came up, there was a day that was set aside. I can't remember what it was, but I want to say it was right around November 15th or so. It was having to do with protesting the LGBTQ thing that the church had brought up with families that were
yeah.
gay and things like that. And then that principle was slowly
Reversed.
reversed back, right?
Yeah.
So those things had come up, and
I was on my way to the temple with her
oh really?
when that got reversed, actually. I remember
Okay.
going to the Provo temple
don't
that day with
remember
Andy. They were in town.
Oh, yeah.
It was that. I'm like, they just
didn't
reversed
know
that
that was
policy
what it
they
was.
put in like 4 years ago or something.
Yeah.
It was something like that.
So it was around that time I was like, well, this might be the moment because my kids are all born, everything's fine. And then obviously I looked more into it, and Reddit had kind of brought up all the different things with it, and then Mormon leaks and so on.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, you know what, it doesn't even matter anymore because they're still going to do what they're going to do legally. Even before, I want to say it was prior to 1990-ish, somewhere in there. You couldn't even resign from the church. The church wouldn't allow you to. They would put you into this category of, I don't know if you were just apostate or whatever, but it was the Jehovah's Witnesses, one of their members who had tried to leave their church, went all the way, I want to say, all the way to the Supreme Court and won, to where the church had to have something on the books to allow you to resign. They had to be forced into it because of that legal precedence. So thank you, J-Dubs.
Yeah. Wow. So you're saying now they do count it?
They don't-
No,
They still
they
don't.
don't.
Sorry.
No,
Okay.
locally, yes, but
Okay.
it pulls you off the local church stuff, so that everyone looks at your stuff here. They don't see you.
But you're saying they don't take it off of the overall numbers when they
No.
announce the numbers.
But it's no
each
different
year or whatever.
than gosh, some of the other, I don't know if you want to put it that way, but I have some words in my head I'm not going to say, but churches that are very much into your business. Later, I was in the branch presidency in Pleasant Grove
Yeah.
for a little branch. It was just a small little student area, and the bishop, well, not bishop, sorry, the branch president, who was a great guy, a phenomenal person. He asked me to become the membership clerk, so I went into, and basically everybody who was coming in, I had to call all of he asked me to call all of their previous bishops and first and second counselors to get the entire story of that person prior to coming in. One of them in particular was it kind of, I don't know, it was a little too much for me because she had just gotten out of a divorce with her husband. Supposedly, from what we had heard, he was abusive. And so I had to call the bishop and ask specifics as to why that happened and what he thought. And then he had told me, he says, well, I don't feel like she had worked through it enough and she should have stayed with him and all of this. And I went to the branch president and told him everything. And then he just looked at me and he says, it's a good thing he's not her bishop anymore.
Cool.
Because
Man.
she's in a safe place now, and now she can live her life according to what she wants to. So that was obviously an eye opener. But some of these other bishops that were out there are taking some records and making sure that everybody passing on knows. So I don't know if most of it is written, I think. I think just my own personal belief.
Yeah.
But some of it is definitely verbal. So
Yeah.
Interesting.
and you move from one place
Like
to
a
another.
verbal trail of it.
I was pretty lucky to have some pretty good bishops, but yeah, then man, there could have been some that we had. It's just you're kind of at the mercy of who your bishop is at the time,
Yeah. I don't know, Jessica, if you remember Keith Wilson. He was the superintendent of Alpine School District for the longest time.
Okay.
Probably one of my best bishops I ever had. And he was a guy, I used to swear a lot back when he and I used to hang out. And
It's really all his fault. I'm seeing a pattern here. That every
No,
time
no, no.
Brennan was hanging out with Hayden, I'm just kidding.
no, I was probably the bad influence for Hayden,
just
actually.
teasing. I'm totally kidding.
But I had sat down with the bishop and I had said, hey, I mean, obviously all of us at this age we're confessing our sins to our bishops because that's what Hinckley kind of pushed.
Yeah.
I said, I swear a lot. And he just looked at me and he says, Brandon, when a jackass steps on your foot, there are only so many words that can explain the pain that is radiating through your foot at that moment.
Yeah.
I said, so if you need to say a shit or something like that, go for it.
That's a good bishop right there.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. He was a farmer, so
Cool.
old
Yeah.
school.
One of my buddies is a bishop that I work with, and a young guy, like probably 32, 33 years old. And he said he had a couple come to him that they're like 2 weeks away from getting married, and they had messed up. They didn't have sex, but they, someone touched something.
Anyway, keep going.
Should I call him and get the details real quick?
No. Keep going.
They didn't have. They messed up. Okay, morally, there was a moral issue. They brought it up to him. He's like, "It's been a couple of weeks. We wanted to tell you. We felt bad about it." And he just like, he was really cool to him. He was just like, "I would be more worried if you didn't have those struggles. I'm glad you have those feelings. You have 2 more weeks. Can you just make it 2 more weeks so we don't have to have any issues?" He's like, and then he told me, he's like, "I don't even know what to do if they do mess up. Like, do I talk to the stake president?" Like, he's like, "I probably should," but I'm like, "You do exactly what you did, buddy. I think you made the right choice." I'm like don't flip someone's life upside down. If they're there talking to you, they could have just lied and made their way in. And what I'm like, they're there, man. They're trying clearly. Like,
I think
It'll
letter of the
probably
law
make it 2
states that you
weeks.
would have to probably wait, but I think spirit of the law, if this guy's running off of that, is what we would hope would
Yeah,
happen.
for all of us ourselves,
Yeah.
right? You know, but sorry, that's probably TMI story, but it was kind of, I'm like, good for you, man. Like, just, and I think there's a reason why it seems like they're calling younger bishops and younger people to callings because I think this world's changing fast
Oh, yeah, definitely.
and everything. But
I have my own opinions
So
about that.
what do you think like is the light and like the hard of the situation that you're in, right?
Communication, everything.
Yeah.
If you can't communicate with your spouse, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's not that we were perfect at it at first. We had to work through it.
Oh, we definitely were. Like,
And we still do today.
yeah. I mean, there was, he always has the funny joke of like, we had our first 2 kids and then we had to figure out if we liked each other. So we have a 5-year span between our next 2. And so I guess we decided we liked each other. Anyways.
Just keep working.
And then we had our
But-
third, and she was
Yeah.
talking to a sock one day, and we realized, you know what, she needed a friend.
Just needed a
No, I'm just playing.
that's
She's
awesome.
funny. But yeah, I think
It took us a while. I
being
mean,
honest.
it was not an overnight thing at all. Like, we had our ups and downs with everything. I mean, knowing what we wanted, knowing what was important to
What was
us.
important was us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. But we also had to figure that out. Like, I think it was more of the fact of like, okay, so you take church out of it. What do we have? You know,
Yeah.
like, is there still something that we are passionate about? And obviously we did. There was a lot. And it just, we had to learn to like respect each other's boundaries of like what we talked about, what we didn't. I mean, we obviously talked about everything, but more as like, he could have just shoved it down my throat. Like, you need to leave this church because blah, 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 blah. Like, but he was respectful of that and saying, you need to find it out on your own and like knowing what you want, what's important to you, all that kind of stuff. And so, and then I was respectful to him because I was not going to make him do stuff that he didn't want to. Like, I could have made him do a lot of things that he didn't want to, but I didn't. I respected, like, this is not where you want to be. This is not what you want to do. And so I let him find himself as well.
Well, and you obviously were very strong in what you did. So when you took the kids to church, you were by yourself. And
Yeah.
yes, there was
And I had to choose that for myself.
there was some guilt on my side for not helping you with that. But again, also my integrity, and this is probably selfish of me, is that I can't be showing support towards something I don't support. I support my wife, I support my children, but they're choosing to go outside of that realm and they're going to church on their own. If she came to ask me and say, hey, you want to sit in with church with me or whatever to take care of the kids, sure, I probably would have done it. But I feel like she had the respect just as I did for her at the time. But also I was in a darker place than she was. So it was a very lonely moment and time for me in that I had a hard time understanding what to do next. Meaning that could I have gone to church with her and sat through the whole thing and lived the lie that I was feeling like I was living? Absolutely. But I would have done it for Amanda. And obviously she chose to not force me to go that direction because it wasn't something that was important to me. And I appreciate her for doing that because she was the trooper in being that person that could to take her 4 kids to church and have the husband that's just sitting at home or whatever, or going to a movie theater or
Yeah.
I had to do something different with my life during that time because I felt guilty and I needed to work through my own
Yeah.
personal issue of that. And later we did work through a few things like that. I think one of the consolations you did was for Father's Day, and we've been doing this every year since. We go bowling. That's what we do. We don't do anything church related. It's all focused around not being in the church, and we go and bowl. So
It's been
Be
fun.
together as a
The kids
family.
love
Yeah.
it. They
sure,
look
they
forward
look
to it every year.
all the time.
Yeah.
It's a
That's
big
great.
deal. Like, they love it.
We're horrible at bowling, but
Yeah.
Well, if you only
That's
go
not
once
the
a
point.
year, you know.
That's not the point.
And I think, like, I mean, that's become a tradition, right? Like, as years go by, that's what my kids will remember. And that's what's important, like, having that relationship, having that. It was never, we're trying to make them not feel like it was so much of a struggle. It's like, we're still happy. We still love each other. I mean, our kids probably get tired of it because we're always kissing in front of them and hugging each other and whatever. But
we do a thing
That's good for them to
the
see, I think.
dinner table that we talk about 1 negative for the day and 2 positives. That's what we do when we're sitting at the dinner table. And most of mine have to wrap around Amanda somewhere.
It's
You
funny
know,
the way he
like
brings it over to me every time.
I don't know. So we're very cheesy with our kids like that, but I think showing that to them shows that our relationship is still strong, that we still love each other, and that we choose each other every day. Because that's the thing. You again going back to being here now, as opposed to looking forward to tomorrow. You're more looking at what's in front of you, and you're trying to be that important person to whoever is in front of you. And I don't know how to explain it, but there was a documentary we watched years ago when it first came out. It was about the TV show Spartacus. I don't know if you've heard of Spartacus, but yeah, it's probably not the best one to watch if you're against certain things. But the documentary was about the guy who actually played the main part of Spartacus. He was diagnosed with cancer, and it was just this whole transition from having everything to going to nothing because his life was being turned upside down pretty quickly. I resonated with that quite a bit, and I was able to show Amanda kind of how I was feeling. Not that I had cancer or anything like that, but
Yeah.
or even tried to equate to something like that. But just the idea of it made me feel better about the moment that I was in, and it's called Be Here Now. And so it was about being present in those who you love's life, and not worried about tomorrow. It's just doing everything you can while you have the moment now.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do with our kids, and our relationship is wrapped around it. So we choose each other all the time. We don't. I mean, we obviously have friends out there, but we don't have a lot of friends because we do everything together. That's just
Yeah.
we
No,
don't.
that's awesome though.
I don't know,
It's harder too when you have 4 kids. I don't know, seasons of life,
Keep
you
up.
know.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know really where I'm going with this, but I do have to say it was kind of a lonely time for both of us. You know, like
Yeah.
his whole life was changing and he was trying to figure that out. And it was only for me taking my kids and people look at me like, well, where's your husband? You know, whatever. Like, why are you staying with him? Like, people would ask me that, which I was like,
Regularly,
wow, like you really,
close family members that would ask her that stuff.
and not even close, just word member. Like, it was just crazy to me that they would just like, why are you staying with him?
Yeah.
Well, why not? Like, I love him more today than I ever have. Like, why wouldn't I? You know, it was kind of, in fact, when we first moved to our home we live now, there was somebody that came to the door and I had talked to her maybe like a handful of times and she like had found out that he wasn't a member of the church, right?
We have a
And
doorbell cam, so I'm listening to the whole thing.
Oh, sweet.
Yes.
at that time I didn't know he was. But anyways,
Yeah.
That's great.
she made the comment of like, well, how does that work? And I was just, I almost didn't know what to say. I was like,
You're like, what?
I literally just met you, first of all. You have no idea our story, what we've gone through. Like,
Yeah.
nothing. And you're asking me, how does that work? And I just like, well, how does your marriage work? Like,
yeah, right?
really? You know, and I didn't know what to say. And it was like, well, yeah, it's hard. Like, but is every marriage hard? And it's like, you choose to work through it. You choose to be offended. Like, you choose to care about something. It's your choice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we chose to make this work.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't. And that's their choice. I have nothing against, you know, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like,
Right.
but that's the thing is we choose it every day and it doesn't go unnoticed. Like we have to work at it every day. And I
There's some
think,
more difficult days.
yeah,
even
for
today.
sure.
And I'll have to bring it up to her. She'll bring it up to me. Hey, we're struggling because of this.
Yeah.
She'll bring up a specific to me, or I'll do the same, and then we have to talk through it, work through it. It's hard at the time, but we
Yeah.
eventually get to the part where we're loving it.
But isn't every marriage? I mean,
Yeah.
Totally.
you know, like,
Yeah.
Totally.
100%.
so how does your marriage work? I mean,
Yeah.
I was so like, oh, it was very hurtful. Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
how dare you ask me that? Kind of feel like,
And I
you
think
know.
if it was a few years prior, I would have taken offense to it, but
Yeah.
I didn't think anything of it at the time. I mean, it did hurt me that it hurt her,
Yeah.
Right.
but
Right.
overall, I was totally fine with it. Had no problem because how someone else views me versus how I view myself doesn't matter.
yeah.
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 That's awesome.
And I've had to learn that. I mean, it's been hard because, I mean, I try not to make what people think of me matter so much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we're trying to teach our kids, right? Like, it shouldn't matter what they think of you. Like, if that's their choice, whatever, you know? But there's things that get under your skin. It's like,
Mhm.
gosh, am I really like that? Like, people really see me like that, you know?
Yeah.
And it's hard, but I don't know. Like I said, you have to choose to be either offended or you choose to just
Yeah.
keep going. I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. She's felt that way too, like going to church here and there, where I'm kind of like in and out a little bit, and just admittedly, like it's getting harder for me to go even to like sacrament now. Like I went yesterday for about half of it. I'm like, man, and that part of it, I had to run an errand, and I didn't want to like. I wanted to get a few other things done too, but I'm just like it's and our kids are getting older too, so but I deal with that guilt too of like it's hard because they feel guilty that you're there and don't want to be, and we feel guilty for not going because then they're there with the kids.
Yeah.
And it's just this, but then you don't feel good while you're there.
Yeah.
At least I
But
have.
I try and be like, I never ask
And we
you to
talked
go.
about
No, I don't either.
right.
It's his
Because
choice.
yeah,
Yeah.
because and I've learned to not put what you are thinking or feeling is not a reflection of me. So it's like one of those things where it's like, this isn't actually about me. But
Yeah.
where sometimes it does, we're in this relationship, so some things
Where
feel like they're connected, but again, I don't know. I think that's
the
where
hard
it's
part is just like
been
Amanda
good.
experienced with a neighbor that didn't probably mean to offend or whatever.
Which I would have to say, I don't think she is. It's just, as I've gotten to know her, that's just kind of
Yeah.
How she is.
She just, yeah.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
Totally. And I think that that's what you're
And she's a good neighbor, by the way.
yeah, she is good.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. No, we
And-
love our neighbors.
And some people are like that, just kind of a matter of fact and upfront and ask questions, and you're like, hold on, dude, I don't like. Let's get to know each other first, you know?
Yeah.
People usually buy me a drink before this
Yeah.
goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think but our decisions do affect each other, right? Like who I am affects how people might perceive you. And luckily, once they get to know you, they realize like, oh, Hayden's just super lucky or Brandon's super lucky, like these guys got really lucky with who they married. But
I agree.
there is that like, what, hopefully nobody treats you differently. Like Brandon said, like, I don't care what they think about me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's more like, I don't want them to feel uncomfortable for me being their well, that's probably number two. Number one is like, they need to like, hopefully you feel comfortable and can just be yourself there and they can see you and your heart for who
Yeah.
you are, and you've worked through that too.
Yeah.
We've talked about that, but
Yeah.
we
But this
were
isn't about us. This is about
for
them.
sure. Well, I'm just kind of like thinking about like, man, there's so
yeah.
many similarities like with our,
Well, it's hard. I mean, myself, like when I was growing up, there was family, because my dad was a smoker and didn't go
Yeah.
to church. So, like, it was very obvious, And there were certain kids that I couldn't go and play with because my dad was that way. And it was very hurtful. Like, being young, it's like, well, why not? Like, why can't I? Is it Be Real? Do you guys have this?
It had to have been because my butt's buzzing too.
we got to get a picture of all of us before you go.
Okay.
By the
All
way, Don't
right.
let's forget
Let's-
we're bad at that.
let's
We
do
did
this
just
Be Real
2
really
hours. We
quick.
promised 2 hours. That's so funny. I'm
Sorry.
the only one that doesn't have it.
Way to go, babe.
There's too many freaking apps these days.
This is what our kids are in our family. So
Oh, that's funny.
I know, this is me. My kids, like literally all my friends are my kids' friends, because they don't have phones or anything, right? And so anytime I post, they're like, "Bleh." And then whenever my kids are on it, it's getting blown up, and I'm like, okay. But now they changed it, so it's like if you don't post right
pictures.
away,
You have, yeah.
yeah, then you don't get 2 extra pictures. So that my kids are like, post it so that we can have more pictures, whatever. Anyway,
yeah,
Be realers.
it's the only social media we allow our kids to have. So,
is it?
Yeah, they're not on Facebook, Instagram, any of those things. So.
Yeah,
Is it the only one that Maddie has, or does she not even?
she doesn't
Be
have
Real
it. No,
on her
it's not
phone?
on her phone.
Do your kids have iPhones?
They have Android phones.
They're starting to
Android's
ask,
fine.
are we on a podcast?
Smartphones.
Yeah.
Your brother's
Okay.
asking, are you on a podcast?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh,
Yes, we are.
That's funny.
Well, we promised you 2 hours, so we're just over that, I guess now. But do you guys have any other closing thoughts or anything that you want to add in there that maybe we didn't cover or
I don't know. It's been fun.
Yeah.
anything?
Yeah, it's been fun. Honestly, it's just, and I've said this before, but it's really what you choose in life that
Yeah.
you want, and nobody has the right to tell you if it's right or wrong. It's what you choose. And I feel passionate about that. I mean, some people will probably have an argument with that because, certain religions, whatever, but I feel like it's ultimately who you are becoming and what you believe your best self is, what you choose to do with your life, and what's important that you push forward. And my importance is being with my husband, and I love him no matter what. Sorry, I'll get
Love
emotional.
that. No, that's awesome. That's
But
awesome.
I do.
Yeah.
He's my
Thank
best
you.
friend. So
That's
Oh.
awesome.
Amanda's my favorite person. So that's just the way it's always been and the way that I choose to make it happen every day. And I'm not perfect and I hope to never be perfect. I'm very much imperfect. And that should be celebrated on anybody's case. I, again, try to take every day as a different day, but maybe more towards pushing to make sure that our relationship is better. And whether that's me doing the dishes or
which he
me
does a lot, by the way.
Nice.
making dinner or just trying to take something off of her plate because being a parent and being in a marriage is not easy. It's difficult. And if it was easy, why would you want to be a part of that? I think the easiness of life are the boring parts of life. I think the parts that are challenging, the ones that you have to work through, are the more meaningful ones that you actually get to take on through the rest of your life and actually look back and be like, damn, that was awesome. You know, those
Yeah.
were the good days, and I didn't even know they were the good days.
Yeah.
So you try to take every day as if it is the good day, and that's just my mantra that I've always kind of run through. And as long as she and I can continue to have the same open-ended conversations that we do, yeah, we have a hard time and we work through some of these difficult conversations, but ultimately we get to know each other a little bit more and we grow together. Because now that, I mean, obviously I work just like Hayden does every day, and Amanda obviously has her own job, but at the same time, she's at home with the kids all the time. We kind of grow apart when that happens, and hopefully, having the open conversation like we do brings us closer together and getting to know each other for these new parts of us that we didn't have before. And I think in any marriage, that's just the way things are. You could get totally wrapped around work or getting wrapped around a hobby or something and leave your spouse in the dark. But if you're not able to bring that relationship to where it is presently, then that relationship would fail. And in the case of a faith transition to where I don't have a faith anymore, um, and just hope for the best, really. I think having that open conversation like we did helped us. It definitely set us up for, I wouldn't necessarily say success, but it definitely set us up for the blueprints to success because every day is a new day. Just because you were successful in your relationship yesterday doesn't mean today is good. You need to work towards that today.
Hmm.
And it's always an ongoing thing. And I know it's kind of daunting to think about, but you're like, man, I put all this effort into yesterday. Now today I got to do the same thing, and tomorrow I got to do it too. And it's something that I yearn for. I love to serve her as much as I can, and in doing so, I grow more in love with her every day.
Awesome.
I love
That's
you.
awesome. Cute.
His
Yes.
answer was much
No, they're both
I'm
great.
rambling.
No,
That's
it's awesome. Makes total sense. It's kind of, yeah, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really hard.
Yeah, and I like that, but it's like the opposite, right? Like
But
you worked really hard today, but maybe it wasn't great, even, you know? But the good news, we got tomorrow to try
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have now, or
So-
yeah, I love that.
We hope to have tomorrow, anyways.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
you kind of look at what happened recently in our neighborhood. We lost one of our neighbors to a car accident in the canyon.
I'm
He
sorry.
was on his way home for his son's birthday. He was
Oh.
coming home early for his birthday and got in the accident.
Yeah, so we were talking about that, and that tomorrow never comes. Let's just put it that way. Tomorrow never comes. Today is always here. So live today
Mm.
as if tomorrow never happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyway,
There you go, folks.
There it is.
Any closing thoughts?
Mic drop.
No doubt.
Brandon.
yeah, I don't know about
Awesome.
I
that.
liked it. Thank you. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank
Yeah.
you so
Thanks
much.
for
That was
having
It was
awesome.
really awesome. to
Wasn't as
hear
bad
and
as I
talk to
thought,
you.
right?
no.
Too crazy once you get going. Kind of settle in and you realize you.
Stumble my words here and there, but
No, you're
No,
great.
I didn't.
This is
notice,
awesome.
So.
No, doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's authentic. That's what matters. So
for sure.
thanks for
That's
doing
right.
Well,
Thanks, guys.
it. Okay. Yep.
you.